I look back at the handful of games that I picked up for the first time in the oh-so-glorious year that was 2020, one title was a surprise hit for me, and that was Risk of Rain 2. I say surprise because I've had my run-in with other roguelites like The Binding of Isaac and Dead Cells, as well as being inundated with the 900 variants of the same gameplay on the Steam homepage, so a new game needs more than roguelike elements alone to grab me. Risk of Rain 2 has done well in this regard. The fast-paced third-person combat and the endless stacking of items really made this title stand out compared to its contemporaries, but the survivors are definitely something to appreciate. What's usually just a model swap with mild stat differences like in most roguelites are instead replaced by 10 distinct characters, and I'm gonna rank them from my least favorite to my personal main. Because I'm not the first one to rank these survivors, I just need to clarify that the rankings will be more based on the characters that I had the most fun playing as, rather than any objective values like best survivability or highest proc coefficients. I'll also be basing my experiences on my many runs played on single player with only a few unlocks, and on this version of the game specifically. And with all that said, so, just at the tail end of editing this video, a new update gets released, and Hopo decided to celebrate the 1-year anniversary by adding a new character to the roster, a secret transformation, if you get a few lunar items, as well as some additions to the current characters' kits. I'm still gonna stick with this version of the game as the subject for this video, but for all of those new Bandit mains out there, while I haven't played too much of him, I could see myself putting him in the middle to upper half of the list, going by how good his abilities are. Though I need a couple more rounds with him before I can make a definitive statement on that. Also, I had to re-record some footage at the last second, so like 5% of this video will be from the anniversary update, but the rest of it is going to be from the previous version. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. One of the more interesting parts about making videos like this is the chance to see other people share their own take on the topic of the video. This oftentimes stems from the inevitable point of contention, where the thing that I'm not all that fond of is someone else's favorite thing in the world. Basically what I'm saying is that the comment section is going to become a lot more interesting to read. Here's a fun story for you. Every blue moon or so, I like to talk with peers about the videos that I'm about to make. When talking about this very video, I lightly implied that MUL-T wasn't topping the list, only to get the verbal equivalent of being boiled alive. Sadly, I just lack the galaxy brain to understand why MUL-T ranks so highly with so many players. Actually, that's not entirely true. MUL-T is a dense mofo with a lot of HP, along with the highest defense in the game, especially when using that transport mode. Like their namesakes, the gimmick of Robot Boy allows him to hold up to 2 loadouts, consisting of a mid-range auto nail gun and a slower shooting but longer distance rebar puncher, with both loadouts having room for their own active items, so there is a lot of potential here. Give them some leech seed, tri-tip daggers, and ukuleles, and you got a powerhouse for the majority of your run. Sounds good! So why did I put him on the bottom then? Well, honestly, I don't like moving around the game world with MUL-T. Outside of the previously mentioned transport mode, their default running speed is painfully slow. And there's also no momentum to that speed boost, despite the fact that MUL-T is effectively just a small car on legs. What's that? Get speed-related items? Okay, hopefully RNG is on my side then. And sadly, there's nothing I can do about that fidget spinner on his gun. The special phrase for this segment is power creep. Commando is the vanilla ice cream of the Risk of Rain 2 survivors, and this has caused him to become quite the mixed bag character in the long run. When booting up the game for the first time, you'll have a good old time with a simple character to get your feet wet and see all that Risk of Rain 2 has to offer. Then, as you unlock the other playable characters, this poor bastard gets benched until he's basically power crept into oblivion. Which kinda sucks because the Commando isn't bad. He's pretty decent in several categories, but that's just it. He's decent. He doesn't excel in damage in the early parts of the run, his mobility is average, crowd control is usable but not great, and his kit is good, but not much of it stands out. I mean, there has to be something good about the Commando. He is the mascot of the game and all. Well, I do like the moment-to-moment gameplay with him, since his movement feels rather satisfactory, especially with that dodge roll. His double tap has a pretty good range, and it actually has the highest proc coefficient in the game, so he's fun to test new items on. And despite the fact that he lacks any major strengths, he also lacks any crippling weaknesses, so if you need a palate cleanser, then you could do worse. It sucks that the developers never gave Commando any equalizer to balance him out from the rest of the roster, like with what the Binding of Isaac did with the D6, but hey, vanilla ice cream can still be good. At least when I'm in the mood for it. Oh hey, a new survivor. Well, this guy looks weird. Huh. Well then. Out of all the survivors, Rex has the highest risk-to-reward ratio in the game. Looking at the rest of the roster with the balancing of their abilities, the cooldowns can be rather pronounced when compared to how fast-paced the action is. Rex outshines everyone with some of the shortest cooldowns in the whole cast. The downside is that you'll have one of your mechanical feet in the grave throughout the entire run. With Rex, you use your health as the ammo for a few of your attacks, and to compensate, you regain HP from dealing damage with parts of your kit. The core gameplay of Rex consists of carpet bombing the enemies with seed barrages, and using the Tangling Growth, or the primary attack, to maximize the healing and keep the enemies held down long enough to fire off more seed barrages. And if things get too intense, you can just boop the enemies away with a well-timed disperse. Or even yourself if you want to. Yeah, despite half of this character being based on something that's rooted into the ground, Rex can channel their inner pigment and launch themselves through the air. If you can get over the cost of being at half health all throughout the run, then you have a potent character that can snowball the damage quickly. Especially since Rex's meta consists of every health item in the game, along with a few backup magazines, and at a tougher times to potentially cover Rex's biggest weakness of getting one-shotted. You know, it breaks my heart to have to tell you guys that Risk of Rain 2 breaks the golden rule of gaming by not letting you pet the closest thing we have in this game to a doggo, but at least you can give him a tasty steak. Looking through all the items in Risk of Rain 2, it's a little weird that poison is an element that's underused in the item pool. Or at least I thought that was the case, because it turns out this good boy was just hoarding it all to himself in this weird pocket dimension. Poison works a little differently here, since it chews through the enemy's health like in other games, but it stops when the enemy is reduced to 1 HP, leaving a golden opportunity for some lizard dude to bitch slap the enemy to death. The pseudo melee combat of Acrid is really fun, as you can leap onto many enemies dealing some nasty damage, which also has the bonus of cancelling all fall damage when using it from a high vantage point. Though he's mostly gotta kill enemies with that poison of his, and that ability to spit it at a distance via neurotoxin is pretty solid. But the standout of his kit is Epidemic, where after hitting his first target, it takes advantage of the lack of social distancing between the enemies and spreads poison to the whole group, killing all of them. Pair this move with some items that deal some small damage to finish the enemies off, like Gasoline Tri-Tip Dagger or the Ukulele, and you have a nightmare for this planet's wildlife. Going by the order of unlocks, Huntress will inevitably be one of the first characters that you unlock, and the jump in quality from Commando is quite something. When going through the roster for characters to pick out which survivor was my favorite, I found myself gravitating to specific traits like movement and crowd control. Huntress excels in both of these areas. She is the most mobile character in the game, due in no part to her ability to fire her primary attack while running at full speed, unlike so many of her peers who have to slow down. This especially helps since her bow has an auto-aim, so you'll always be hitting the enemies if they're at the proper range. Though the bulk of her damage comes from her laser glaive, as it bounces up to 6 times between the clusters of enemies, dealing slightly more damage with each hit. The arrow rain is fairly decent, though I mostly use it on bosses and big enemies since most of them are rather slow, though the apex of her kit is the blink ability, since it's without a doubt the best dodge move in the whole game. You teleport a short distance and are invincible while doing so. This also cancels fall damage, so go wild with it. With items like backup magazine for glaive spamming, rose buckler to increase defenses while moving, and infusion to make up for that minimal health you start off with, Huntress can be a potent character with the potential to snowball into a satisfying run. And yeah, she has a really nice ass.
さっさとかかってこい。かかってこねえならこっちから行くぜ。
If you're looking for the highest tier for power output and mobility, then look no further than Loader. Being one of the few melee fighters in the game, her Knuckle Boom, I wish I was kidding with that name, does a hefty amount of damage. And thanks to her passive ability, anytime she smacks enemies around or punches them, she gains a temporary barrier. Speaking about that, the Loader's Gauntlet ability holds some of the highest default damage output, period. Especially when you get some good momentum with a running start. And then there's the most useful part of Loader's kit, the M55-1 Pylon, used for clearing out Wisp and other small enemies while dealing with the more important matters, like finding a good angle to fire your grappling hook from. Yeah, I should also mention that she has one of those. Her grapple fist can be used in combat, as it can be used to pull yourself to enemies, but it's primarily used for traversing the levels, and damn is it fun. And when you time it with a well-placed charge punch, for some extra airtime really gives off the exaggerated swagger of a spaceship survivor. The fun continues if you get any speed items like goat hooves or energy drinks for on-foot traversal, and getting some focus crystals for some up-close damage is a match made in heaven. And if you get yourself the Afterburner, then you've all but guaranteed yourself a god run, cause the world will be at your mercy.
How am I gonna stop some big mean Mother Hubbard from tearing me a structurally superfluous new beehive?
Fungus.
And if that don't work, use more.
Fungus. I have a mixed relationship with characters that use turrets as part of their kit. I've dabbled with games like Overwatch and a little bit of TF2, and the moment-to-moment gameplay of those characters never really clicked with me. I'd wager that this feeling stems from the fact that everything that doesn't involve the turrets is fairly uninvolved. Find a spot, place the turret, and twiddle your thumbs while occasionally repairing the turret or firing outside of its blind spot. Risk of Rain 2's engineer breaks new grounds with 2 turrets. In place of just 1. And also to make them comically broken. Throughout your run in Risk of Rain 2, you'll gather items to improve your character in various ways, and both turrets get all of the same upgrades as your character. So yes, you can equip some snazzy sunglasses for your turret to wear. Also, you can effectively triple the sources of damage for enemies and bosses. Yeah, I said triple because unlike the 2 previous examples of turret users, this engineer plays surprisingly well. His primary attack has a noticeable windup, but the damage is good enough to make the delay tolerable. His ults like mine and the bubble shield can be useful, and the movement speed is pretty good, despite having all that gear on his person. And because the turrets are taking most of the attention from the monsters, survivability is pretty high with this guy. Equip engineer with some bustling fungus for healing the stationary turrets, lens making glasses for crits up the ass, and will-o'-the-wisp to tear the enemies apart, and you have a monster of a character. Yeah, I know items like infusion no longer work since the turrets take away your health bonuses, but honestly that is a small sacrifice for such a fantastic character. Risk of Rain 2 was in early access since March of 2019, and slowly got more updates improving the quality of the game till its full release in August of 2020. And to ring in the full release, we got one hell of a character. A captain is defined as the leader of a ship, or even a group of people, taking them on the desired path to what their crew all want at the end. Some leaders will just bark orders and call it a day. This guy leads by experience. You can tell the captain is special since he starts off the run with an exclusive legendary item, the defensive microbots, which circle the player and deletes any non-hit scan projectile that's facing it, making it one of the most powerful defensive items in the game. This not only just applies to the character, but this microbot can be given to every turret and drone that the captain interacts with, including the backup, so the potential for snowballing is nuts. His primary weapon is nothing to sleep on either, as it's a pretty versatile shotgun that can be fired up close for solid damage, or or can be charged to fire at the range of a sniper rifle. Though the part of this guy's kit that puts him above and beyond is the ability to control his ship from orbit with a variety of abilities to boot. You can drop up to 2 drones per level with the ability to stun nearby enemies, heal allies within the radius, recharge equipment, or to hack open a chest for a free item, which can be broken if used on the more expensive ones. And then there's the ability to call the ship to rain death from above. So while you kite enemies into a good spot, you can carpet bomb the level for something truly empowering. And going back to his primary weapon, because the shotgun fires several pellets per shot, every item that can benefit from multiple hits can work wonders with this character. And if you get items like the Rose Bucklet, Bandolier, and Hardlight Afterburner, you have a high tier survivor that can tear through the opposition with little to no effort.
I have the power of God and anime on my side!
Wait,
Throughout the entire list, we've seen characters use a variety of weapons that can be used at a variety of ranges for their own playstyles. 2 of the survivors had melee as part of their kit, but it wasn't the core means of dealing damage. Mercenary stands out from the entire cast as he is the only character that entirely relies on hitting enemies up close, and he is a blast to play as. His primary is a 3-slash combo with his laser sword, dealing a pretty decent amount of damage as well as tagging enemies on the 3rd slash, making it so the next attack deals more damage, and his secondary attack Whirlwind doesn't do much in terms of damage, but it can be useful for getting the mercenary more momentum when attacking, which is definitely helped out by his passive ability to double jump. Speaking about that, the momentum is the glue that keeps the mercenary's kit together, since his next ability, Blinding Assault, allows him to dash through the air at anime speed, slashing through any enemy that was in your way, with the extra bonus of being able to use this ability up to 3 times if you consistently hit your target. All of these give the mercenary some fun combos, with the cherry on top being Eviscerate, which lets you disappear for a second and slash everything around you. If timed right, you can even dodge attacks completely, and it just looks cool, man. Items to make this experience even cooler are the ones that give him speed boost, the ukulele to help out with crowd control, some tougher times to help out with close range damage, and focus crystals since you're always going to be close to the enemy no matter what. The power of anime was strong with this character, but only one was able to rise above the mercenary as my personal favorite. If you're familiar with the cast, odds are you've done the process of elimination and found out who got the top rank, so I'll just save everyone the time, drop some lunar coins, and get on to why I like the Artificer so much. Looking at what the character initially had to offer, I wouldn't have thought that the Artificer would have been my favorite, but the unique quirks made it click for me. All the previous survivors had a variety of abilities, with cooldowns being used for balancing purposes. This was easy to work with because the primary attack was always unlimited, but that does not apply to Artificer. All of their abilities have a cooldown, but the trade-off, and why I like playing as them, is the fact that you start off with elemental damage. With all the other characters, you have to rely on items to use fire, electricity, and ice, and to have these from the get-go is very fun. What helps is that each ability can hold its own weight. While the Flame Bolt is just okay, the Flamethrower is very useful for dealing with close quarters enemies. Snap Freeze is fairly useful for grounded enemies, and also has the added benefit of making an insta-kill option if you get the enemy's health low enough, along with it being a nightmare for certain bosses. And then there's the Charged Nanobomb, which is the bread and butter of the Artificer's kit, as the blast radius is pretty big, making it great for crowd control. And there's even a ukulele-esque electric bolt that hits enemies as it passes by, so even if it doesn't hit directly, it's still useful. Even the passive elements of their kit is appealing to me. The lightweight of the character makes movement easier, and there's the hover pack, which lets the Artificer slowly descend from the high area, which can be pretty helpful in combat along with level traversal. Playing as Artificer isn't all perfect. I'm not fond of how they're so lightweight that one explosion can launch you into a nearby death pit, but ultimately that is such a small drawback for a character that is this fun to play as. How's that? Good items? Well, backup magazines can make an already useful nanobomb a run pusher, and a personal shield generator can help out with health, and Will-O-the-Wisp just adds more splash damage. Anything else would just be icing on what is a perfectly made cake. I know there are plenty of roguelites on the market right now, to an almost overwhelming degree, but if you had the specs to run this game, give it a shot. It's up there as one of my favorite games in recent memory. Hey, post-video Ren here. I hope you enjoy the video, and links to all the important stuff, including my Discord server, will be in the description. Anyhow, I decided to take a second to look at the fan art that I had received as I was making this very video. First, we have a nice little sprite from Briggs, an image of a poorly drawn challenge from Lilacat of my OC after seeing some weird shit and not knowing how to feel about it, a really nice commission of my Blue Dude and Jack Frost from Phantom, and my Sona vibing in a purple backdrop from Tanuki Player. Links to all their accounts will be in the description. And as for the next major video, I'll be tackling another sci-fi themed indie game, but this one reminds me of some of those games that Nintendo used to make. And with all that said, catch you in the next video.